Does Boston getting Jrue Holiday negate Milwaukee Bucks acquisition of Damian Lillard? Going to try to answer that question with the host of the Locked On Bucks. Plus, I'll talk about all the stuff that happened at practice. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I'm here for you every Monday through Friday with a free, fresh podcast that's dropped directly to your device if you subscribe. So make sure you're doing so wherever you get your podcast. You can also do it on YouTube. Hop into the comment section there. Let me know what you think. Later on, I'll be talking about the Kristaps Porzingis, his post-ups and stuff like that. He talked at practice, a little bit of that first practice, but the first and second segments, let's just dive into it. I got the host of the Locked On Bucks podcast, Kane Pitman, and the question is whether the Bucks should have just kept Holiday and maybe Dame could have gone elsewhere and Boston wouldn't have gotten Jrue Holiday. Were the Bucks better off just keeping Damian Lillard? So this question, Kane, came up with, I was listening to Zach Lowe. By the way, I mean, what a season this is going to be for us. I feel like we're going to be doing a ton of crossover shows together this year. So this is great. I'm listening to Zach Lowe, and kind of a couple of executives kind of suggested to Zach that Milwaukee kind of is worse off this way. So I came up with this question. I tweeted it out. No one has a good answer. I don't have a good answer. I don't know if you have a good answer, but the question is simply, are the Milwaukee Bucks better off having gotten Damian Lillard, but sending Jrue Holiday indirectly to the Boston Celtics, or would they have been better off keeping Holiday, having Damian Lillard gone wherever else, and Boston having to deal with Malcolm Brogdon and, keeping Robert Williams? What do you think?
So I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. And firstly, I will say we've done a whole bunch of crossover podcasts for obvious reasons over the last few seasons. And I've already enjoyed over the last few days the amount of Celtics fans that are in the comments on our YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you've found the same, but certainly Celtics fans have come across, which I personally love. I love the rivalry. I love the fact that Celtics fans think that the Boston Celtics have come out on top. Bucks fans completely disagree with that, and that sets up for what's going to be a really fun season. But I think there's two ways to look at it. 5 comments in my YouTube page, so I'm psyched. It's awesome. All right, go ahead. Yeah,
it's
going to be a lot of fun. So the two ways to look at this. So in terms of, and we'll get into this more, but in terms of what it looks like on the court, I think we're going to find out because there are so many unanswered questions about the way that the two rosters fit on the court. As much as we can come to our own conclusions now. So I think long-term, the actual answer on the court, I think is going to be a longer discussion for me and you to have here. But the simple way to look at it for me is if you're the Milwaukee Bucks and everything that's gone on in the last few weeks with Giannis, the fact that you offensively have just struggled in the postseason the last 5 years, including when you won the title, if you have a possibility to bring in a player the caliber of Damian Lillard on the offensive end to your team, then and the cost is Jrue Holiday, who is a superb player and every Bucks fan absolutely loves, but he's not the offensive player Damian Lillard is. This has been the major weakness for this Bucks team.
Right.
And Lillard has never played with a player like Giannis. Giannis has never played with a player like Dame. So the trade, regardless of whether you think there's a chance Jrue Holiday can end up in Boston, I think the trade is a no-brainer. And even though this is the way it's worked out, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you still do it every day of the week. That's where I sit on the trade.
Yeah, and I agree. I guess you could never know ahead of time. You had to know that Boston would have been one of the suitors. Yes. And you hope, you're Milwaukee and you fingers crossed and you go, oh, please, anybody, please come on, Miami, come on. Because any of these other teams, Miami, Philly, even in the Eastern Conference, that just kind of levels a little bit of the playing field. It doesn't vault anybody ahead. Now, from the Boston perspective, obviously I'm going to skew a little bit towards the, Milwaukee might have actually inadvertently hurt themselves. And that's mainly because I do believe that, first of all, I agree with you. Before understanding where Jrue might go, you got to do the deal for Dame. It's a price you got to pay. I understand Boston just paid two prices for Porzingis and for Holiday. So I agree. When that opportunity is there, you got to make that deal. But I've always believed that Boston kind of matches up well against Milwaukee. Well enough where Boston's come out on top in recent series for various reasons. I know the Middleton injury and stuff like that. But Boston and Milwaukee, you have the best player on the floor, but Boston wins its fair share of games, I think, because it takes away your strongest defense, which is Brook Lopez guarding the rim. And now with Holiday coming to Boston, it's like, oh, you got Dame? Boom. You got me at your chess move. Here's Boston's chess move. And again, you always get Dame, and Dame's going to, doesn't matter what Holiday does. Dame's going to hit some shots. But at the same time, I'm sure everybody in Milwaukee or the people in the front office were just thinking anywhere but Boston, because all of a sudden the narrative goes from Milwaukee has vaulted themselves to the top of the East to Boston answers their move. Boston's back on top. Whichever way you fall, the fact that it's this close still after you trade for Damian Lillard, I can argue that it's a little bit of a loss for Milwaukee. The trade for Damian Lillard should put you ahead, and now I'm not so sure that you're ahead.
Yeah, so in isolation, the Bucks, I think, are better. And they were also able to, and I think part of the deal is, and trust me, I know that no one in Boston is getting fearful of campaign, but they didn't have a backup point guard, so they opened up a roster spot. They were able to bring him into the roster, which actually is meaningful in Milwaukee. But the Damian Lillard stuff, I think with Jrue Holiday and for the Bucks, it was really challenging for this team year on year on year, particularly with some health stuff over the last few seasons, to come into the postseason and say, well, we know that the Bucks aren't going to outscore a team. It isn't going to be a potent offense in the postseason. And yes, you have Jrue Holiday out there on the perimeter, who, in my opinion, is the best perimeter defender in the league. Now, Boston fans have argued that in the past with Marcus Smart. I wonder now if it's going to change a little bit. Now Jrue Holiday is on the Celtics. But I think Jrue Holiday is the best perimeter defender in the league. But even when he is guarding Kevin Durant, which he's been asked to do, Jimmy Butler we saw in the last year's postseason, any of the guards that he comes up against, Devin Booker, naturally with the way the NBA is right now, you are watching the games through gritted teeth and you are hanging on for dear life because the offense is so damn good in the NBA. And so for Milwaukee now, the reason why Boston has been so good at least getting multiple guys at Giannis, in my opinion, was because they were able to throw everything at Giannis. Because Chris Middleton wasn't there last time, but the Bucks just didn't have anyone else to really terrify the opposition, including Jrue Holiday. So you got Marcus Smart, you got Grant Williams. Rob Williams obviously has been injured a lot. Al Horford was a couple of years younger. So I still think when you talk about Giannis being the best player on the floor, the Celtics have changed dramatically, and we discussed this in the podcast a few weeks ago. So I think when everyone's looking at the Bucks and the Celtics right now, they're talking about Dame, they're talking about Jrue. I'm not hearing enough people talking about Giannis.
That's fair. That's fair. And I will say that Boston made its own moves that might weaken them in that regard. I'll talk about that in just a second. First, today's show brought to you by Ibotta, Ibotta. You know, the weather's getting cooler around here. I know it's going to start getting dark at 4:30. You got to stock your closet with winter clothes. And with Ibotta, you can get cash back on winter coats, hats, gloves, scarves, all of that and more for the whole family. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items. From produce to personal care to pantry goods to clothing at retailers like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy. Well, you're not going to get your clothes at Lowe's, but maybe you are. Maybe you are. Maybe you're a working man. Maybe you need some of the big, thick stuff that they offer at Lowe's. Whatever it is, go download the Ibotta app, link your loyalty account, upload your receipt after your shop. You get cash back. The average Ibotta users get $100 a year. That costs a lot. You know, that covers a lot of costs. A shopping trip, money towards a flight, a vacation that you're looking for over the holidays, a game you're trying to go to, a dinner, whatever it is. They give you money, cash, not points that don't amount to much. This money goes into your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. So download the Ibotta app right now. Use the code Locked On to start earning real cash back. Go to the App Store or Google Play. Download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. It's locked. I'm sorry. The code is LOCKED. IBOTTA in Google Play or the App Store. The code is LOCKED. Thanks, everybody, for listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast or the Locked On Bucks podcast. If you're watching there, make sure you're checking out the Locked On NBA podcast. I'm hosting this with Jake Madison on Wednesdays, rotating hosts all week. It's a fun show. All right, Kane. So one of the things is Boston traded away Grant Williams. And Grant Williams at least was a big body that could slide. And, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that he could defend Giannis, but he could get in Giannis's way from time to time and offer up a little bit of resistance. And, hey, every once in a while, you pick up a charge on Giannis. And that stuff all kind of adds up. I will say that it's a little bit tougher. I'm not thrilled that it cost Boston Robert Williams to get Jrue Holiday. Now you have to rely on Porzingis and kind of have to hope that 37-year-old Al Horford can get through the regular season in enough kind of, in one piece where whenever the Celtics face Milwaukee, presumably the conference finals, Horford is ready to go. And that means, on top of the guys that they've lost, it means Joe Mazzulla getting his guys playing their best basketball during the playoffs, finishing series when they're supposed to, and not messing around like they've had a tendency to, playing extra games, 2-3 extra games sometimes to get through a series. That's important. The coaching, no one's talking about the coaching. Boston has a second-year head coach in Mazzulla. You guys got Adrian Griffin, which I compare to a little bit in the Ime Udoka realm in that he's been a long-time assistant coach. He bounced around as a role player for a long time, which means when you're a role player, you got to know how to do everything. And when you're with a bunch of different teams, you soak in the knowledge from a lot of different teams. I don't think he actually comes in as a typical first-year head coach. I think his NBA experience prepares him for this job. But between the point guard battle, the Giannis and whomever the Celtics can throw at him battle, and the coaching battle, I think it's win 2 of those and you can win the series.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of unknown. I suspect the Boston Celtics roster is going to look different by the time the postseason comes around as well. So,
probably.
When I see a lot of people talking about the depth, I don't get too caught up in that right now. I think the Bucks probably make another trade. I think there is a lot of question marks, not only with the unknown with the coaches, but on the wings defensively for Milwaukee. A lot of people are talking about that. We don't really know what Jay Crowder looks like. Pat Connaughton was injured for much of the season last year. Chris Middleton's come off knee surgery in the offseason. So there is a lot of questions for the Bucks from a health perspective and just what do guys have in the tank. So we focus on the offense, and the Bucks will undoubtedly be much better because if you do have Chris Middleton looking anywhere near like the guy that has destroyed the Celtics multiple times, if he's now the third guy and he doesn't have to carry the entire perimeter offense, you look good. But defensively, the Bucks are going to change. And if we think about the Bucks and the Celtics in postseason series going by in the past, there's been a lot of games that have been 90 points, just cracking 100. They've been defensive battles because typically this is where these two teams thrive. I wonder if that's going to change a little bit. But when you mentioned Adrian Griffin, I think he's probably prepared based on the resume he's had as an assistant coach. But I do wonder how the pressure changes on this Milwaukee team, because if they had rolled back in with Jrue Holiday, yes, there would have been a lot of talk about Giannis, but there is a lot of known. You knew what you were going to get for the Bucks. You could have, in my opinion, penciled them in for 52, 53, 54 wins. They're going to be fine, and they'll probably be great in the offseason. But I think the outside expectations now are significantly amplified compared to what they would have been if you had Jrue Holiday. And if the Bucks do get off to a slow start, and maybe Dame and Giannis don't look perfect out of the gate, then everything is going to amplify a little bit. So I think that there are significant questions for the Bucks.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. It's tough when you're in that position, as prepared as you can be for taking that job as Adrian Griffin. I do honestly believe that he is prepared as prepared as anybody could be to take the head coaching job. It is so different. You got to do media every day. The GM is looking for you all the time. The owner of the team wants to talk to you, not the assistant coaches. The media, the fans, the sports talker, everybody is talking about you. And it can be tough. I think if Joe Mazzulla has any advantage is that he went through that season. He went through the deer in the headlights, no pun intended, talking to you guys, but the deer in the headlights kind of season. He's talked about how things are going to be different this year. He seems different. He seems more comfortable, maybe a little bit more sure of himself. So I don't know how Joe Mazzulla is going to be this year. Maybe it's a wash, and this becomes a push, and it just one of those other matchups is going to be the key here. But I do think that having gone through it, kind of like a Chet Holmgren having gone through a rookie season without having played, kind of the cadence of the season. Like last season was almost it was a weird kind of first year head coaching gig for Mazzulla. Having gone through all of that, now you can really go through, like, this is almost his real first year, but he knows everything. So very interesting to see how that matchup plays out. Let me ask you a quick question about Holiday. So if people are watching on YouTube, over your left shoulder is the image of the alley-oop that Jrue Holiday threw Giannis, if I'm not mistaken. That's the image of the alley-oop that he threw after the steal in 2021, like one of the signature plays of all of NBA playoff history. But he has this reputation of his shooting falling off in the playoffs. Is that a function of Milwaukee didn't have anybody else to go to and too much was put on his plate? Or do you think when it comes to the playoffs and his shooting, it's a pressure that maybe might be too much for him to handle, and it's something that's just part of the deal?
The mental stuff is hard to really get a read on, as you know, from the outside. It's hard to project whether that's actually a problem for him, because he's such a level-headed, calm guy that he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would feel that type of way. Yeah. I think there's a few things that matter. You will notice he takes very difficult shots, and he's always going to this step back. And if Celtics fans haven't watched Jrue Holiday a lot during the regular season, you'll see him taking these step back threes, and you'll think this is the craziest shot of all time, but he actually shoots a pretty high percentage of those. So yeah. I think he takes tough shots, particularly from the perimeter. And I think that there is little room for error once you get to the postseason. Defenders are perhaps up in you a little bit more. The closeouts are a little bit tighter. So I think that plays a part. And honestly, I think that the biggest issue with his shooting and efficiency in the postseason has been the fact that he has coasted during the regular season defensively. And I say that Jrue Holiday coasting is still a top percentile. Yes. Yeah, but you can see when he's defended, whether it's in a series against the Celtics or the NBA Finals, and he's ripping the ball out of Devin Booker's hands on the play that you referenced, he goes to an absolute different level, and he's playing 40 minutes a night of that high caliber defense, often against guys that are bigger than him. And I think there's a fatigue element in the postseason, which did impact his efficiency in the playoffs. So he was an unbelievable playoff player for the Bucks, but no question, the efficiency wasn't great in the postseason, which amplified when you didn't have Chris Middleton, obviously, a couple of seasons ago, because he was asked to be that second scorer. And I don't think that's necessarily where he fits best. Yeah. If you're a Boston fan, you're sitting back and saying, okay, well, we've got Tatum and Brown. We don't really want him or need him to be that guy. Maybe that looks better. Yeah. Plus Porzingis. So, Holiday can really – there's a potential for Holiday to do a lot of catching and shooting. So, all right. Well, look, Celtics and Bucks, it's so funny, the split for this season. They play in November, and then they don't play again until January. And then they've got this 2 games in late March and the last full week of the season. I don't think we're going to be looking at a scenario where Boston rests all their guys against Milwaukee anymore. Those 2 games could be the difference between top seed and second seed, if the Celtics and Bucks are going for it at all. So I don't think we answered the question.
about whether Milwaukee is better with Lillard and Holiday in Boston, but I don't know if it's an answerable question right now. I think you can make a case for either, which kind of puts both of our teams right where they began, but with further distance between them and the rest of the East. I think that's fair to say.
We thought they were on a collision course last year. We think they are this year. Surely this year it can't be avoided, but I think both teams should feel very comfortable. Celtics fans, I understand why they might be feeling comfortable right now, but if you're a Milwaukee fan, you just got Damian Lillard. For the first time since the 70s, you've got 2 top 15, maybe top 10, depending on how it works out, guys on your roster. That simply hasn't been the case, and you've got every right to be very, very excited.
Yeah, be happy in Milwaukee, be happy in Boston. This is going to be a fun season. Kind of an unanswerable question right now, but I went to the Locked On NBA podcast, which I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison. We tried to tackle that question. Jake actually made a pretty good point, which you can listen to if you go check out the Locked On NBA podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. You can also go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, a lot of moving parts. Josh Lloyd has all of your fantasy basketball ramifications from this trade. Also today, the Celtics had their first official practice. Nothing special other than those guys went for a long time. It was loud. It felt like, from what I could hear, they don't let us see the practices. Once upon a time, that was allowed, but not allowed anymore. But we could hear the practice, and it seemed pretty loud and intense. So that was fun. Joe Mazzulla talked afterwards, and nothing groundbreaking there. A lot of just, it's the first day. We all feel good. Let's see how it goes beyond that. Kristaps Porzingis talked. I talked to him about his post-ups, and it's a piece that I wrote about on Boston Sports Journal where we talk about him posting up. And the interesting part there is the reality check. I asked him, what was it about the Washington years that made you a much better post-up player? In Dallas, he scored less than 1 point per possession on post-ups. He went up to 1.12 and then 1.18. Last year, he was 16th in the NBA in post-up frequency. And of those 16 players, he was second in points per possession. So he was very effective, only behind Nikola Jokic as a post-up player. I asked him about it, and here's his quote. I looked at it when I was in Dallas. I looked at my numbers and my post-ups, situations I was in, kind of analyzed, and I had a reality check, realized that I need to get better, need to get better to be able to use that part of my game at a good level. And that's what I did. And later on, he talked about how he's the experience. He's developed 1, 2, 3 things that I just keep doing over and over and over again, and they keep working. So I look forward to improving on those things, possibly adding more counters and more things there. So the Kristaps Porzingis post-ups are going to be something you got to watch for in this regular season. It's something that he does well. It's something that he has been working on. It's something that he is focused on. And it's something that the Celtics are going to want to use. It's something that the Celtics are going to have to use because late in the shot clock, this is the reason why he is here for the late in the shot clock possessions where Tatum and Brown continue to struggle in, it hurt them in the finals. It hurt them in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Porzingis is going to be a guy that they rely on with his back to the basket. And I wouldn't be surprised if that 16% of the time that he had been posting up in Washington bumps up a little bit, 18, 20% of the time. We know he's going to be a stretch 5. We know he's going to be out there to spread the floor. But also, he is going to have to punish some mismatches because you've got Tatum and Brown, and when you play pick and roll with those guys, especially if you set good picks, you're going to have to end up switching from time to time. And that's going to mean Porzingis will get favorable matchups in the post, and that means he's going to have to go take advantage of those possessions. This is, I would dare to say, a priority for the Boston Celtics. If they're not posting up Kristaps Porzingis late in games, then they're doing it wrong. And so I think the Celtics are going to rely on that. So it's good to hear Porzingis talking about that, how he's focused on it. I asked him if he went to somebody for some advice or anything like that. It didn't seem like, I was wondering if he was going to like say, yeah, I called up Hakeem Olajuwon, or I called up, hey, on the off chance that he might have called up Kevin McHale, or maybe Kevin sees maybe Kevin McHale's post up radar, like the bat signal goes off. And he's like, wait a second, Boston has a guy that wants to post up. I feel compelled to go to Boston and teach Porzingis the ways of the post up master. That would be amazing, because then maybe I'd get to talk to Kevin McHale. He's my basketball hero, because I've said this before, I think, when I was in high school and when I really sucked at basketball, it was watching Kevin McHale moves. It was watching how his footwork, how he had his footwork and the moves that he made, the drop steps and the up and unders, and how you set up your move and your counter to that move and all of that. And it really is, I can even take the steps forward and say, Kevin McHale is the reason I'm here. He's the reason I'm doing this podcast, because he's the reason I got good at basketball. He's the reason why I was able to score as many points as I did. He's the reason, the number one reason why I went from, oh my God, why is this guy even on the team, to colleges giving me calls and asking me to play for them. So if Kevin McHale, if I can speak this into existence, Kevin McHale come to Boston. Kevin McHale give Kristaps Porzingis some pointers, and then please talk to me about those pointers that you're giving him. And I promise I will try not to gush too much. Or maybe I'll pull the Bart Simpson. I can't promise I'll try, but I'll try to try. But look, Porzingis is going to be, this is one of the ways he's going to be incredibly, immensely, massively important for Boston. So sorry, Rick Carlisle, who said back in 2019, a post-up is not a good play anymore. It's just not a good play for a 7'3" guy. It's a low-value situation. I think things are turning around. I think the worm has turned, and post-ups are going to be valuable situations for the Celtics in late-game situations especially. The threat of Porzingis there, the potentially passing of Porzingis out of post situations. If he is effective in those post situations, he's going to get double teamed, and passing out of those double teams is going to be huge. So there's a lot springing from these potential post ups. And of course, obviously with Porzingis, the first question was, how's your foot? And he said, it's fine. I know I saw people in the comments section, they don't believe that changing your shoes could be something that leads to plantar fasciitis. It certainly can. It absolutely can. He could also be BSing us. It's possible that he's BSing us. I don't know, but it is literally possible for you to change the type of footwear, a particular brand, and have your foot kind of be like, I don't like the way this fits. I'm not liking this. And it's going to be sore. You're going to develop a little bit of inflammation. It's entirely possible. I'm sorry that you don't get that. The people who are calling BS on that, I'm sorry you don't get it, but I can tell you it is possible. All right. Is it what happened specifically here? Is Porzingis making things up? I don't think so, but who knows? Who knows? People lie to us all the time, but it is possible. I'll leave it at that. He says he's fine. He's out there. He's playing. So if he's fine, he's fine. And we'll continue to ask him if he's fine every time we talk to him until he gets sick of the question, in which case, hey, then maybe we'll ask it just a couple more times. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the segment with Kane. I thought it was an entertaining question, not because I actually think the Bucks would have been better off keeping Holiday. I think you make that trade 100 times out of 100. There are good reasons to make that, even if you know Holiday is going to Boston, which they didn't. But even if you say, hey, look, we'd rather deal with Dame and making Giannis happy and Dame being happy and pushing forward with offense. I think defense is being a little bit marginalized, so you can make a deal like that. And, hey, Boston got a little bit better, but Boston's thin too. Boston has a couple of guys that had been relied on to help stop Giannis or slow Giannis down, and those guys aren't around too. So it goes both ways. But I thought the question was kind of interesting. So I hope you enjoyed that part of the conversation. We'll be doing a whole lot more of that kind of stuff, crossover episodes, throughout the course of the season, trying to make this interesting for you. So make sure you are subscribed. If you're not a subscriber at this point, would love to have you on board. If you are a subscriber, thank you very much. If you are an everydayer here Monday through Friday, thank you so much. Love that you're making the show part of your daily routine. So in the shower, walking the dog, going to work, at work, I'm not going to tell on you. Go ahead, pop that YouTube tab in the back, listen to the podcast through a headset, a little earpiece, and just enjoy tic-tac-tacking away at work and pretending that you're being productive. Like I said, I'm not going to blow up your spot, so keep doing what you're doing. I'd love it if you also share the podcast, spread the word, tell your friends, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.